Weeks ago. Since that time, Jamie Bryce and the fire chief have informed me that Station 3 down in Industrial Park, and I think it was built in 77, Mark, has some structural integrity issues. And so it'll be up to the council to decide if y'all want to tear down and start over or try to fix it. I think Mike and Jamie can give you briefings on, but I think the fix is $900,000, and they're not going to guarantee that the roof won't leak. And then a tear down and rebuild is 1.5. Does that sound right? And we have about 1.7 million, according to Mr. Winningham, in CARES Act money that we can use for this. But anyway, Chief Winter and Jamie, you guys are up. Hey, Phil. Is his mic on? Is your mic on, Mike? Mic on, Mike?
There's a, yes. I think it is. It is. There's a red light on.
You're good.
Okay, so the station was originally built in 77. It was added on to in early 2000s. I'm not sure the exact year, but it was early 2000s. It was expanded to better accommodate a three-man station. Since then, we've had continuous issues with roof leaks running into the station. There should be, I think in your packet, is a information sheet from Craft and Toll. There's some pictures in there of some of the damage that's been done. We reached out to roofing companies to have them come in and look at it. Their price to fix the roof was going to be $150,000 to $200,000, and that was going to require them to completely rip it off. And by them doing that, that was going to push us into another category where we then had to meet current codes, building codes, electrical codes, fire codes, and the dollars started adding up. So we backed off and started looking at what it would cost to erect a new building, tear that one down. And at the time, metal was not quite as high as it is now. And we felt like we could do it pretty close to the same price that it was going to cost us. Metal has since gone up, as you're all aware. Lumber has gone up, but it's coming back down. So anyway, during that time, Mayor asked us to go ahead and have a mold study done, an asbestos study. Those studies came back that there were no hazardous levels within the station. We were advised not to punch a hole in the ceiling or in the walls, but that the air was good enough at that time. We also have some structural damage. There is a door that you cannot open. It's one of the bay doors, the side door that leads into the bay. The building is settled onto the door. You can't open it. But anyway, you guys approved Craft and Toll to come in and evaluate the building. They looked at it, they have the numbers that should also be in your packet, as the mayor said, a little over 900,000 to remodel it, and their estimate was about 1.5 to build a new one. I think we might could come in under that, but I wouldn't, not gonna hold you to my word, though. We have another concern. If we do rebuild, if you do opt to rebuild that station, where to relocate the firefighters if we rebuild on the same spot. As you're aware, you have an ISO of 1 right now. If we shut that station down, and I don't know how long it would take, I would assume at least 6 months.
1 year.
Yeah, that's what I figured. ISO will give you 6 months to correct the problem. So that would put us into another category with ISO. I've spoke with the mayor about different properties. That is totally up to the mayor and y'all of where to relocate that station to. We've looked at the possibility, if you do choose to rebuild that station, of trying some type of temporary facility. And I don't think that that's going to be feasible by the time you run water, sewer, electrical, to even some type of a mobile home or something. And then we still have the issue of keeping the apparatus out of the weather, heated during the winter time so the water doesn't freeze, things of that issue. Would it be possible to build on site, maintain that station, that building, build next to it, behind it? Well, there's an old pipeline that runs through there, which you're not allowed to build on top of the pipeline. I think you can have a parking lot on top of it, but you can't build a permanent structure. So that kind of leads us up to what we're here for tonight. Decide what y'all want to do about Station 3.
Mayor, my thoughts are, I don't think it would behoove us to sink any more money into this building. I mean, we need something that's gonna last for years and years down the road, and I just can't see us spending $1 million on a building that they can't guarantee the roof. It's gonna eventually have other issues, I'm sure. Could we possibly build a new station? I mean, you and I talked about Harkrider, over by the street department, where we're relocating them, and maybe staying in that house until we get one built, and then selling that property to help pay for the difference, or
Yeah,
just a thought.
I'll have to talk to Brett Carroll. I know that Brett and I have been in negotiations. The council allowed us to negotiate the purchase of that property for the street department. They also have a separate piece of property there where the restaurant is located, the smokehouse, where it's located. I have not asked Brett if he would sell us just that piece. Of course, he'd have to run it by his board, but I can ask him to do that. Mike and I had talked about some other locations as well. Can you reach out to the ISO and see if they've got any thoughts on that? I don't think, at one time we thought about our property on Farver Lane, but we've got Station 6 on top of the hill there.
Farver Lane. You talking about my house?
Yes. We're gonna move into your house. And then we talked about the training grounds. I think, and Mike, you correct me here, it's been a while. I think it's imperative that you guys can hit the overpass there on Dave Ward fairly easily.
Right. Where we're at right now, obviously, we've got Dave Ward access, Harkrider 365, and Interstate, and they're all right there. And by moving to the training side off of Sturgis, we've got the train tracks that we wouldn't have to cross, but we have to loop around by Amtran and then hit, come up over Dave Ward. That could cause a problem. It also takes us further away from the interstate. It's a possibility.
What's your choice?
Personally, Ms. Smith said, I would love to put it on where Smitty's is.
Okay.
Right on Harkrider front, it'd be right next to the street department once,
If that goes through, yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
I mean,
you're not very far from proximity you are now.
No.
So
Yeah.
it's
Oh, yeah.
just
that's why I was asking,
earshot.
you the one going to be doing it. I was trying to get, we don't need to pick our location. We need to try to figure out what you want and see if that's doable to me. Because you the one need to know directions and everything. I mean,
So the
but I agree
history.
with her 100%. We don't need to remodel this thing because And if we try to remodel it and move somewhere else, we're gonna spend that same amount of money on doing that. And it's an old building, and it's just like me, when you got parts break down, and so the lady gonna have some more parts break down, so I'm just saying, we might.
The original,
Talking about the Smitty's property, are you talking about like in the parking lot right in front of it?
Yes. Tearing the building down and,
Tearing the Smitty's building down,
Yeah.
and the building there?
Use that.
yeah. But, yeah, go ahead.
If we could get an idea of what the property would be worth on Dave Ward, or whatever street that is, actually, that side street, but that property, you know, that would be helpful as well.
We might could
to-
offset some of our
Yeah,
costs.
definitely. I mean, it may offset the difference in what we're paying for the roof and the difference in the new building, so possibly. Just my thought.
How much longer is it gonna survive?
it's safe right now.
Today.
That might be, we have a representative from Crafton Toll here. She might can answer that.
So if you go in there now, you really need to wear a hard hat now.
We've got the helmet. I've got the
Okay.
helmets.
So no visitors right now.
Now, what about, I'm sure this was looked at, just across the street's that abandoned Freedom's Bank building? Would it make sense to buy that, tear it
Down, go there and have that entire bigger area for more needs than just, I don't know.
The only thing
We can price them.
Yeah, but I don't know if that's gonna be large enough, you know?
That's for the land.
I think, how big is the station now, Mike? 4,200 square feet?
Correct.
I think it's probably big enough for that. We could get a price on, I don't even know if Conway Corporation will even, if they're even interested in that. So, we can,
But that's a
who
good
owns
idea,
that
though.
property you're talking about, David?
I mean,
Regions
Regions
Bank?
Bank, I don't know if Regions Bank leased it from a
Okay.
local owner or what, but, you know, they moved out of it.
Okay, one
There's
other question, would it be cheaper to build at that site on, Hawk Rider, or to tear that down and start all over?
Yeah, the thing, I think what we're trying to get away from on building on that site is having that area without fire protection during that time.
What's,
Having it without fire protection during
Where-
that time.
Oh.
Of course, with ISO, the ISO, once they note a fault that they're going to ding you for, they give you 12 months to correct that. So I'm not really worried about the ISO rating unless they've changed Mike, and I promise you they could have in the last 7 or 8 years. I think we'll be okay with the ISO, but that station does run the interstate and Dave
yeah,
Ward
but I
Drive.
was talking about tearing down Regions and rebuilding.
Oh, okay.
As opposed to the site on Hawk Rider where you don't have to tear anything down to start work. See what I'm saying? I don't know what the difference of the cost of the
Yeah, I don't,
properties would be.
I don't know what
but it seemed
retrofitting
like
that
it would be
would be
cheaper
like.
just to tear the parking lot up and start a building there than going through tearing Regions.
Well, I mean, we need to price all this stuff out. My thought was to level the Regions building, just start with a blank slate there, and just build a fire station to our needs there. And then the old one can be demolished, and that land can be used by the fire department or anybody else within the city for whatever we want it to be.
Yeah. So let me ask the council this, are y'all all in agreement that we, move forward with a new structure?
Yes.
Okay, do y'all want to
Yes.
pay with it with CARES Act money?
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
so it won't come out of the general fund?
Now, when we start talking about buying other pieces of property, whether it's the barbecue place or the bank, then that one, whatever the figure was we had.
Goes up.
That's going up. and
That's
It's
correct.
going up substantially.
Yeah.
Because that bank was put there because people thought that was a high-traffic area, which it is. And so that's gonna command a high price.
It may be priced.
Yeah, but we've got a piece of property as well there, so.
Yeah.
I think we need to approach Conway Court first.
We
Yeah,
will.
Let them work with us.
I talked to the people at Regions because that's what the bank I used, and that's why they closed it down, because they wasn't getting high traffic in there. So when you negotiate with them, you can tell them that because that's why they did.
Well, Jamie's our negotiator, she's pretty tough.
You know, to me, Mike, and I don't know if you concur or not, but getting out on that road from where we are now, that's tough.
It is.
It'd almost be from Smitty's up on Dave Ward before you could be
Yeah, before you get out there.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is very treacherous to turn left on the day board.
Yeah.
And we
Miss,
we work with Finley, we can control the light, you know, to the east, but we can't see coming over the overpass. Right.
Well, Miss Isby's been working with our swimming pool group. Miss Mel's working on her bikes. I'm gonna assign an old grouchy fireman to work with you on this, and it's not me. I'm not old and grouchy, but Ledbetter is.
No,
This kind of hurts Ledbetter's mind's feelings. We spent a lot of time at that station. It's just another piece of us
we put
gone,
the
Mark.
first coat of paint on that
Just
thing.
another piece of us gone.
Hey, you're probably right.
Okay, so council, if y'all are okay, then we will, move forward. I will call Brett Carroll in the morning. Of course, he'll have to run it by his board and see where they are. And then I will, if they can work with us on that, we'll, get an appraisal on that and see what that'll cost us. We'll reach out to Regions and see what that will cost us and get those two hurdles cleared. And then we'll report back to y'all and move forward from there.
I got one other thing to say.
Yes, sir.
I always got one other thing. Go ahead, y'all. But, when we gonna buy that property from Conway Corp anyway? Yeah.
Well, that was our original intent, and they were intent on selling it. However, like everything else, when they got the prices on their new facility that they were gonna build at this time, it came back at more dollars than they really wanted to spend. So Brett told me that they may have to, hold off on that.
Oh, selling it to us?
Yeah.
Okay, well, maybe they will, that will kinda help them some if they sold it, cause they're not gonna be using that little spot there. It would help us tremendously.
It would. And they're good to work with us. Common Corp's always been good to work with us.
Okay.
But yeah, we'll go that way. So, Mark, you and Mike, it's y'all's show, so. Good job, Mike. And,
He can adjust his time to an old man's schedule.
well, I know how slow you move. You'll be all right, Winter. He's not gonna run over you or anything. All right. Councilors, or anything else? That went a little quicker than I thought.
She said, do we need to hear from them since they're here, or we just?
Yeah, Craft and Toll, come on up.
Since they're here?
Jamie, do you have anything you'd like to add, or Mr. Winningham? Hello.
Sure.
So we visited Station 3 year for about 3 weeks ago. Our findings basically are close to what Chief Winters said. Inside, there's substantial water damage, particularly visually, and also just, it looks really rough. Really bad. So, there's that aspect. There is the fact that the roof over the main portion of the building is less than 10 years old. It's our understanding that that's leaking quite a bit, which is not common, which leads us to think there's a deeper problem. So even just in looking to replace that, it would probably be more than just ripping off the roof and putting a new one on. We'd probably have to take part of the walls down and rebuild that to truly address the issue and get it all flashed in correctly. Where the newer addition abuts the original one, it looks like we've got water kind of coming over and kind of raining down at that new addition. There's evidence of that inside the building. Some other things we did see, other evidence of water just like cascading down inside the walls. There's a picture of it in your package. There's like a white chalky substance, which is just very indicative of water kind of coming in. Structurally, like Chief said, it's okay for now. There is evidence of the building starting to shift, particularly at the front end where that door frame is really jammed. That's signs that part of it is settling. And then, like as he mentioned, the amount of upgrades that it needs is really gonna push us into needing to make it code compliant, ADA, at least for what would be seen as the public areas, like where you guys would come visit. So kind of the kitchen, the living space, the bathroom. When that thing was built, ADA wasn't really a deal. So, ripping all that out and going back is a big deal, and you want to talk about adding dollars really fast. I was recently looking at a fire station in Springdale to do sort of the same scope, and just the remodel aspect completely priced it out. So they're also going with a new station because they said, why would we spend $600,000 to fix something that's old anyways? Not old, if you painted it. Is vintage, I do what I can. I'm just flipping through my notes here. Another thing that I kind of talked about in my report is newer stations definitely incorporate more of the technology that you're seeing in newer fire stations. And just by technology, I mean like awareness of cancer hazards and stuff like that. So when you design a new station or you retrofit one, you build in sort of these stages where they come in for a call, they can shed their bunker gear, and then it goes in a place and we clean it up, and then they go clean off, and then they go back to everyday life, so they're not wearing their bunker gear halfway through the building, and there's plenty of room for them to clean up. So long term, it's beneficial to you to incorporate kind of those decontamination areas just in terms of safety and lifelong problems. They did seem to have a hangout spot in the bay, kind of behind one of the fire trucks. Don't really encourage that because, again, just off-gassing from the vehicles and everything as they leave. I mean, you had an exhaust system in there, but, my husband works for the fire department. Half the time, I don't even know if they hooked that thing up. So, not this one, a different one. But, I'll be like, aren't you supposed to plop that thing on there? And they're like, oh, we just didn't have time to do it. Not saying that your guys do that at all. But another primary thing to consider is energy efficiency. A station that old likely has pretty high electrical bills for the city every month. And, in doing a remodel, we could work on bringing some of it up to a better place. We could possibly do new windows or better lights, but the reality of it is you can only do so much with an old building, exactly. So, just by doing a new station, we can get a vintage building.
Vintage. Theo.
Vintage.
Vintage.
I also tell people, I'm like, you just have more wisdom, so. Oh, I'm not, I'm looking around. So yeah, energy efficiency is another big issue that by doing a new station, you could definitely benefit from, and could help offset cost. But yeah, basically boils down to, we do think Station 3 is pretty much at the end of its lifespan, and I agree with you guys' decision that why would you sink $500,000, $600,000 into it, and it lasts 5 more years, who knows? So anyways.
Those walls didn't give away any secrets while you were down there, did you?
I didn't.
Because besides Ledbetter me, Charlie Scroggins and Randy Freeman and Fred Gates worked down there too.
I didn't scratch it too hard, but I've only been there once, so there's no telling what could happen. But do y'all have any questions for me?
No,
No?
I don't.
Okay. You're welcome.
Thank you. That
No problem.
was a good presentation. Council, any other word, anything you'd like for us to do different on this? Actually, Mr. Ledbetter has very good working knowledge of fire stations. He was in on the original bills and also on our remodels, and he helped us with Central Station that's there now, and Station 5 and Station 7. So he's got a good working knowledge of it. It's probably the nicest thing I'll ever say about you.
We're gonna jump right on just trying to buy it, right? Somebody turn them up. I forget to turn them. Thank you for turning on my mic, whoever did it, but anyway, is that what we're gonna do?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, we'll Mr. Ledbetter and Chief Winter report back to y'all here once they get something up and running that works for everybody.
Station 3, we have 2 bays.
2 bays. And how big is that property? That total piece of dirt that you're on?
I cannot answer, but where the station sits, city owns that, and then they own a triangle directly to the south. That
Okay.
runs the
Does it go
south
to
side
the
of the station and runs at a triangle to Neighborhood.
Okay.
And that gas, the pipeline
Is it a
comes just off that triangle running to the north.
Yeah.
west there.
I believe it was Sunil.
That's right.
And it still functions?
I don't think so, but we were told we still can't build it.
Well, now, that's not fair.
It was a jet fuel pipeline. I don't think it's still in service, but I'm not 100%.
Why would we not be able to build on that? Anybody know? I don't
What is
have
that,
a
Mr.
clue.
Hawkins?
I'm sorry?
What was your question?
The question is, why would we not be able to build over the top of that pipeline if it's not functioning, but we don't know that it's not functioning?
I can't answer that.
Anybody? Anybody? Somebody? Nobody? Yeah.
I think the principal reason you wouldn't,
Thank you. Mr. Jones, mine turned on automatically too.
this light must not work. The principal reason would be whether there is a pipeline in there or not. If it's still an active easement, then that's something that they still maintain a right to that property. So essentially, you all would be one of the bodies that could, well, it would be an easement that is granted only to that company. So we would have to go back to that company and get them to abandon it, and it's pretty difficult to do that, because a lot of times, for instance, Alcoa and Reynolds, they own a big aqueduct going through the center of Bryant that went from Hurricane Lake down to those old plants. It hasn't been used in 30 years, and they're still not relinquishing the rights to those easements. So it's kind of a similar situation that they don't really have an incentive to release it, even if they're not using it.
Thank you, James. Ms. Mel, just to kind of to bring you up to speed, Craft and Tull and the fire chief have recommended to the council that instead of spending $900,000 to remodel the station industrial park, we'd use CARES Act money to rebuild. We're going to talk, Chief Ledbetter's going to work with Chief Winter, and they're going to talk to Conway Corp. And well, I'll actually call Brett tomorrow and see if they're interested in selling us a piece of that property. And then they will reach out to the folks who own the bank across the street, and then we'll compare numbers and bring that back to the council and see what y'all want to do going forward. But I think the consensus is that we will rebuild instead of repairing. Yeah. Oh, thank you. All right, council, it is 5:58. We'll adjourn for about 32 minutes and start back. Thank you all. Yes, sir. The Cowboys did.
Testing, testing, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Audio test, testing, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7.
Good evening, everyone. We proceed each council meeting with a word of prayer and the Pledge of Allegiance. If you would like to join us, please feel free so. Miss Isby, could I get you to word of prayer, please, ma'am?
If you'll bow with me. Our gracious Father, we thank you for all the abundant blessings that you've given us. We just thank you, Lord, for all that you've blessed us with in this wonderful community. And we just ask, Lord, for your wisdom and your guidance as we handle the business of this city. And we just ask, Lord, that at the end of it, that you get the glory and the praise that you deserve. In your name we pray. Amen. Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. You gotta give the
Now call this meeting to order. Mr. Garrett, would you call the roll, please, sir?
Mr. Hawkins? Here. Mr. Grimes? Here. Miss Mel? Here. Mr. Ledbetter? Here. Miss Smith?
Here.
Mr. Jones? Miss Isby?
Okay, you should have all received copies of the city council minutes from August 24th. Any corrections or changes? We have a motion and a second to approve. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes 7-0. Our first order of business tonight is a public hearing. It will be to discuss a closure of a portion of utility easement on lots 17 and 5B at the crossing at Audubon. This public hearing is now open. If you speak, would you please state your name and address for the record? Mr. Bill Atkinson is the applicant, and Mr. Walden, I have you scheduled to speak as well. Which of you would like to step up first?
Since I'm the applicant, I guess I'll speak first.
Come on up, Bill.
With the council. I filed this petition on behalf of the two lot
Would
owners
you
involved.
state your name? And,
I'm-
we know you, Bill,
You
but go
said
ahead.
that, I apologize. I'm Bill Atkinson, and I live at 5880 Prince Street in Conway.
Thank you, Bill.
And the property that's involved is in the Audubon subdivision, and involves an easement that's not been used ever. And I developed that subdivision, and I can't remember now why that was put there, but there are no utilities there. It crosses lots 5B and 5 and 17. And I filed this petition on behalf of the Kohlers and the Atkinsons, the two owners of those lots. And I have submitted to the city, to the clerk, the statement from each of the four utilities saying that they have no objection to the closure. So I would ask the city to close that, please. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to try to answer them.
Council, do you have any questions, Mr. Atkinson? Is there anyone else that would like to speak for or against? Since there's no one anyone else to speak, we'll now declare this public hearing closed. You have before you, council, an ordinance to approve the closing of a portion of utility easement on lots 17 and 5B at the crossing at Audubon.
I make a motion to waive 3 readings.
Have a motion and a second to waive the 3 readings. All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Passes 7-0.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve this ordinance. Any further discussion? Mr. Garrett.
Miss Mel? Aye. Mr. Jones? Yes. Miss Smith?
Yes.
Mr. Hawkins?
Yes.
Mr. Grimes?
Aye.
Mr. Ledbetter?
Yes.
Miss Isby?
Yes.
That'd be ordinance 02191.
Passes 7-0. Thank you, Mr. Atkinson. Next up, we have community development. Mr. Hawkins, we'll turn this section over to you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The first item on the agenda is a resolution to approve issuance of hospital revenue refunding bonds for the Health Facilities Board. And we have a resolution to be read for this. It's Resolution R 2173. Thank you. We got all kind of bond guys and girls and things here. Somebody stand up and say something.
I guess I'll have to say something. This was
Thank you, Gordon.
The Gordon Wilburn,
Thank you.
Q-Tech Rock, hometown boy, but I don't live here anymore. The Health Facilities Board met today at 11 a.m. and approved the issuance of these bonds. But by ordinance, when you set up that Health Facilities bonds a number of years ago, the council has to ratify any action by the Health Facilities Board. So that's what this resolution does. The Facilities Board approved all the documents. What the hospital is doing is just refinancing some existing debt, some Series 2012 bonds, just for debt service savings. Happy to answer any other questions.
I make a motion for adoption of the resolution.
I have a motion and a second to approve this resolution. Any further discussion? Mr. Garrett.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed.
Passes 7-0. And council, I just got a text asking that you would all turn your microphones on, please. On, yes. Got the little red light on there. Thank you, gentlemen. Ma'am, thank you. Okay, Mr. Hawkins.
Next item, Mr. Mayor, is Next item is a resolution expressing the willingness of the city of Conway to appropriate funds to match grant funding for the Tiny Toads Public Arts Project. Say that 3 times. This resolution is R 2174.
I make a motion for adoption of the resolution.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to adopt this resolution. Come on up, James. Let the public know kind of what we're doing here, please.
Yes, so this is a grant opportunity through the Arkansas Department of Arkansas Heritage with the Main Street Arkansas program, which the Downtown Conway Partnership is a member of. So they have access to apply for the funding for this. It's basically a $10,000 grant with a $10,000 match. So it's a 1-to-1. This would be the project that we are applying for is called the Tiny Toads Project, which we have already gotten a separate grant from the Arkansas Historic Preservation Program to develop a brochure that identifies about 10 or 11 properties in downtown Conway, MLK Square, the Golden Dragon Cafe, Frown Hall Schwartz Building, the Halter Building, several key buildings with an intent of helping interpret the history of those structures. So this is kind of a second phase of that, to have what you would call an art scavenger hunt for little bitty toads. The intent with these are, for instance, with the Old Goat Bakery, is for it to have something where a little toad is baking bread. That was real popular there. For the Massey Hardware, the idea is that the little toad will have a hammer. At the jail, the toad would be trying to escape from the jail. And so it's all these little vignettes of scenes where these toads are doing things that connect to the history of those locations, and it's meant to help educate folks on sort of the history of Conway. So
Cool.
We're hoping to get the grant. It would require $10,000 come from the public art budget or the sort of that fund, the public art fund, and then there would be $10,000 from the state. So.
That's cool.
Okay, sounds like fun. Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve this resolution. Is there any further comment or discussion? Mr. Garrett.
All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed.
Passes 7-0. Mr. Hawkins, I'd like to make one note.
Yes, sir.
On this next one, in the resolution, in the last whereas, the amount should be $144,400.
Instead of 144.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Very good. Next item, Mr. Mayor, is a resolution authorizing the city to obtain a matching grant from Fema and the Arkansas Department of Emergency Management for Centennial Creek drainage for the Transportation Department, and we have a resolution for this item. It's Resolution R 2175.
Mr. Vincent, would you like to come up and explain this for the public, please, sir?
Yes, sir. Robbie's right behind me. If you've got any questions about the details of the grant, I'll let him handle that. But I will tell you that Centennial Creek runs underneath Prince Street and up towards the Graham Drive area, which I know the mayor remembers because a good number of houses flooded there in just his first few months of office. We've been chasing a solution to that drainage problem for years now, and the problem lies in the fact that the wooded area that the creek drains through is a protection area. It's a wetland mitigation area, so we can't do anything in it without going through a lot of difficult paperwork and buying mitigation credits, and it all gets very expensive, and have not been able to make the numbers work on any kind of a grant application. So what we're doing on this grant application is just applying for the engineering. Essentially what we're asking them to do is hire a specialized engineering firm to come up with a viable solution, because we've not been able to do that. There's got to be a viable solution out there somehow, and so we're hoping that we win this grant. And I'll let Robbie, if you have any questions about specifically about the grant, tell you about the grant.
Come on up, Robbie. And Robbie's hit the ground running on grants, I can guarantee you all that.
Hopefully this is the first of many opportunities I get to come to you guys and present some funding opportunities for the city. But like Finley was saying, he covered most of it, but this grant is through Fema. It's kind of funneled through the Department of Emergency Management. So we submitted a notice of intent to them on last Friday. So it's pretty fresh that we got that in. And hopefully we'll hear from them soon. Hopefully in October, we should be notified if we're eligible to officially apply. So that's kind of the process of it. Yeah, and sorry about that typo on y'all's resolution, but yeah, it's not $144. $144,400.
Thank you, Robbie.
Thank y'all.
I make a motion for adoption of the resolution.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to adopt this resolution for a FEMA grant for Centennial Creek drainage. Any further discussion? Mr. Garrett.
This will be R2175. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed.
Passes 7-0. Mr. Hawkins.
Next item, Mr. Mayor, is an ordinance to authorize the addition of one construction inspector position for the Transportation Department. And Mr. Benson.
Thank you, Mr. Hawkins. I currently, the Transportation Department currently employs one full-time construction inspector, and in addition, we have one contract labor position that is not quite full-time, but I'd say somewhere around 20 to 30 hours. That person that's working, doing contract labor for us has a desire to slow down. In addition, the person that is full-time is kind of on his way out, and not tomorrow, but in coming years. So we find ourselves where we're going to go from essentially almost 2 people to no people in a short period of time. At the same time, when we've got more construction in Conway than we have literally ever had before. I have no problem justifying a third position, but like I said, in addition to that, I think I really see a need to potentially hire somebody before we lose one or both of these people. I've found a very qualified applicant, and I'm just asking for the creation of another position.
I got a question. We gonna keep the part-time guy?
We are for now. Mm-hmm. Yes, sir. And he is part-time. He's not technically an employee. He's contract labor, so he sends us a bill and we pay the bill. But yes, we are going to keep him for now. Really, we have been paying a consultant to do the construction inspection on the first phase of the Donaghy project, because it was just way too big a project for us to be able to inspect in-house, because not only do we inspect all of our other construction projects, but we also inspect all of the construction projects that are in public right-of-way that developers take on. So essentially, all of the developer projects are at least enough for one full-time person generally, and then the work that we historically do is enough for another person. But when we passed the sales tax and added all that work, it was just more than they could handle. So we have been paying a consultant to do the construction inspection on the first phase of Donaghy. My plan, if we hire this person, is to ask him to do the construction inspection on the second phase, which will save us a lot of money.
Okay, I got another question. I'm sorry I asked questions to people. I know people's out there thinking the same. Well, it might be. When this other guy leaves, got full time, will we need to replace him then, or we don't know right now?
I don't know right now. I think a lot of that will depend on if the sales tax sunsets. Mm-hmm. But of course, it will sunset unless the council chooses to ask the people to vote to continue it. If it sunsets, perhaps not. But if it doesn't, then we probably would need to replace that person.
I make a motion to waive the 3 readings.
Second.
Have a motion and a second to waive the 3 readings. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes 7-0.
Make a motion for adoption and the emergency clause.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to adopt this ordinance with the emergency clause for the additional position of construction inspector for the transportation department. Any further discussion?
Is that about what a construction inspector position pays right now, or is this higher or lower than?
This is a very appropriate for a person of this level of qualification. I won't have to train this person. He's got decades of experience. This is the same rate that my other current full-time employee makes.
Thank you very much.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Garrett.
This be ordinance 02192. Mr. Grimes? Aye. Ms. Mel?
Aye.
Ms. Smith?
Yes.
Mr. Ledbetter?
Yes.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Ms. Isby?
Yes.
Mr. Hawkins?
Yes.
And the emergency clause, Mr. Grimes?
Aye.
Ms. Mel?
Aye.
Ms. Smith?
Yes.
Mr. Ledbetter?
Yes.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Ms. Isby?
Yes.
Mr. Hawkins?
Yes.
Those both pass 7-0. Thank you, Finley.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Council.
Thank you.
Mr. Hawkins.
Next item, Mr. Mayor, is consideration to approve contract with Cox McLean Environmental Consulting to handle the resurvey of the Conway Commercial Historic District. And James, hello.
Hello, yes. We had brought you the RFQ for this sometime back to accept the who won the contract at the time. So we have gone through and negotiated the contract with them using a very similar contract to what we've used with for all these Arkansas Historic Preservation Program projects. What this will do is essentially resurvey our downtown historic district with the intention of taking it eventually from what it currently is a National Register district to a local district to replace the current Old Conway overlay review in that area with local district review. The intent of that is to prevent demolition of structures. So that's essentially the main difference between those two things is there's a pause button before demolition with it going to a local district. This $19,000 grant, it's fully funded by the state, and Cox McLean was who from our committee, the one that we felt was the best that would integrate with our GIS system and did a really good quality job.
I make a motion to enter into this contract.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to approve, consideration to approve a contract with the Cox McLean Environmental Group. Any further discussion?
We're not looking to change any boundaries or anything, are we?
There is a small area where it is, the survey is being done in the idea that it might expand. We would only do that, I believe it's either on Court or Chestnut. There's someone that has a property that they're interested in using to get tax credits. And so they have approached us about coming into the district. We wouldn't be expanding the district unless somebody wanted in, essentially.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Mr. Garrett.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
Passes 7-0. Mr. Hawkins.
Next item, Mr. Mayor, is an ordinance to authorize changes within the planning and development and permits and inspection area. And James, sure looks like it's got your name written all over this.
Yes, so there's sort of 3 main things that this is meant to accomplish. The first and foremost that's most important is the creation of a new permits technician position. We currently have 1 permits technician. Previously, before the split of physical plant and code enforcement from permits inspections, there were 2 folks in that office. We've tried to sort of create a workable solution of trying to cross-train, and those things ultimately did not work out. We had one of our longtime employees in that handled permits go to another department, and so we've had to rehire a new person in there. With that, we've identified that it really needs to be 2 people doing that. So that's the main thing that this does is create an additional permits technician position so that there will be 2 people in the office. Reasons why, if anybody wants to take a vacation and you still want to have the ability to process permits, that's kind of an important thing. So that's having that, and also sharing the workload. Those are two of the main things. The workload with permits over the last few years has increased considerably. The other things are the creation of new titles. So you'll see in that section 1 of there's the creation of several titles, with the exception of permits technician and planning technician, which are currently now admin 2, and the title planner 1. None of those will be used. Planner will be changing to planner 1. The idea of creating these, none of these are being authorized to be filled or anything along those lines. It's just going ahead and creating these titles, creating these positions, with the intent that we would have an ability to promote folks later on down the line in subsequent years. One of the things that is a challenge within our department is once you get in and you're in a certain position, there's really no opportunity for upward movement unless someone leaves. And so what this would do is create some meaningful steps for folks to advance in those positions and as they garner more experience, more expertise. Additionally, you'll see some that are in there that are indicated with AICP. AICP is the American Institute of Certified Planners, and so it would essentially amount to, if it were authorized later, a $1,000 bump on their pay as a result of taking that test. So you have to have a certain number of years of experience. You have to go through a pretty rigorous testing. It's a 2 to 3 hour test that you have to sit through. And then you also have to maintain that certification over time. And so the idea is if someone is taking that step to really be professional and advance themselves, that we would recognize that step in their compensation.
And I do hear from some of the contractors that work daily with this group. And I think the other day, when I talked to James and Kenny, it takes about an average of 15 minutes for each permit that they enter, and they had 45 permits that need to be entered in one day. And that was an uncommon day, but we issue a lot of permits during the day. So it is hard to answer the phone, answer questions, hook them up with an inspector, get everything scheduled, and enter all their information.
And the thing I forgot to mention is we have salary savings from when the long-range planner position was created, that position wasn't filled for about half the year. So there is no budget impact for this year. We're just funding that creation of that position out of that salary savings.
How many people have you got working in your department?
So if you count within planning, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Within permits, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7.
13, and you're
Yeah,
asking,
with that additional position.
Wow.
okay. And you're asking to reclassify 11 of those 13. Am I understanding that right?
No, reclassifying admin 2 and creating two separate titles that are being converted at permits technician and planning technician. So the idea is that you have to have a lot of specialized knowledge to do that. So it's not changing the pay, it's not changing salary. It's just changing the title from admin 2 to permits technician and planning technician.
I was just reading what was in section 1. It says shall be created, and then there are 11 spots that look like to me they're being created, but that's not what.
It's just titles that are being created that could be authorized in subsequent years. So yeah, with the exception of planner 1, which is a change from planner, and admin 2, which is converting to planning technician and permits technician, none of those positions will actually be utilized at this time.
Thank you.
I make a motion to waive the 3 readings.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to waive the 3 readings. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes 7-0.
Make a motion for the adoption of the ordinance along with the emergency clause, and I guess the emergency clause is because of the two positions, because you're saying that these are just positions, but they're not being filled at this time,
The
so.
reason for the emergency clause is Lisa has interviewed a second permits technician.
Okay,
And so if this ordinance were to pass, they would be starting tomorrow.
okay, so it was basically for the positions that you had mentioned, okay.
We, in terms of getting permits out, we've been in a world of hurt. And so we're trying to get in people as fast as we can, get them trained up
Right.
and absorb. The person that we had in that position was doing a phenomenal job, and we miss her very much. But we're very happy that she is taking a step to advance her career.
Okay,
Yeah, Winningham poached her. Moved her upstairs into finance, and she's done a tremendous job. You know, this is really a good problem to have. It's
Yeah.
because of how many permits we're issuing.
right.
I second that motion as well.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to adopt this ordinance with the emergency clause. Any further discussion?
And this all fits in your budget for this year. You don't need to get up just to, yes
Yeah,
or
yeah,
no.
it fits. There's no budget
changes.
changes.
No budget changes.
How about for next year?
Obviously, yes, it would, with the creation of another position, that would need to be funded in next year's budget.
One.
Yeah, just one position.
Thank you.
Any further discussion?
I'm done.
Mr. Garrett?
This be ordinance O-2193. Mr. Ledbetter?
Yes.
Mr. Grimes?
Aye.
Ms. Smith?
Yes.
Ms. Isby?
Yes.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Ms. Mel?
Aye.
Mr. Hawkins? Yes. And the emergency clause, Mr. Ledbetter?
Yes.
Mr. Grimes?
Aye.
Ms. Smith?
Yes.
Ms. Isby?
Yes.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Ms. Mel?
Aye.
And Mr. Hawkins?
Yes.
Those both pass 7-0. Mr. Hawkins?
Final item here, Mr. Mayor, is an ordinance to amend the Conway zoning code concerning short-term rentals for transient occupation.
Mr. Walden?
Mr. Walton, that's kind of confusing. That's a,
And Mr.
That doesn't-
Dunbar is here tonight also, Mr. Hawkins.
that doesn't read real well, but
I agree. It's using terms that are frequently used in code language, particularly as it relates to building code language. Short-term rentals essentially are VRBO, Airbnb. Transient occupation essentially means less than 30 days. So this is for the use of structures for a single-family house to be rented out as an Airbnb to someone for less than 30 days. So I do this quite frequently. This was tabled from the previous meeting, again, to provide more time for you all to review it. We posted it on the planning website, to allow folks to have time to review it. It went through, we had a public hearing at Planning Commission, and this is in part to address concerns that have arisen in one of the neighborhoods. This is probably about as light touch of a regulation that you can go. Other cities that I know have regulated it a little bit further than what this proposal is, but the intent is let's get them registered, let's get them licensed, let's get them inspected, and see if, you know, having a local property representative that is responsible for helping police and monitor the property, if that can solve the issues that we have, then there's no reason to tack on extra regulations. If that doesn't solve that problem, then potentially in the future we can come back and enhance the regulations. But in essence, this is intended to get those structures registered, have them be inspected, make sure that there is a local property representative that can respond within a couple hours. Let's say there's a bunch of kids that are having a party, they're drinking, they're underage. That local property representative can come out and deal with that. That contact would be on file with the city clerk's office. We would additionally keep it on file with the police department. Really intended to address those things. Additionally, they'd have to provide information packets in the short-term rental that tells kind of the rules of how you operate, where trash is supposed to be. If there's a pond next door, don't go venture off into the neighbor's pond and jump in the lake and hoop and holler and carry on and stuff like that. So it's intended for issues like that.
James, do we have a way to reach out to people who are using this service? I mean, how are we going to get them registered, I guess?
There are companies that will provide you a list of the Airbnbs and VRBOs that are operating in the city. So our intent would be to obtain one of those lists, contact those individuals, inform them of the ordinance, and then get them registered.
Yeah, none of this looks very harsh.
Not at all.
Knowing what we go through with our rental property, that's kind of like this, short-term rentals.
Well, it's informed partially by my experience previously in another community. I tried to regulate short-term rentals because there was some folks in the community that wanted that regulated. It was one of the three most painful professional experiences I've ever had, and being screamed at and verbally abused for over an hour, and it was not fun. And so I said, let's start with something light, and we'll go from there.
Great.
Who was screaming at you there, property owner or?
It was both the people that were concerned about short-term rentals and then the people that own short-term rentals. So I was stuck in the middle with no way to satisfy either.
Mr. Dunbar is pretty good. This is a pretty good step, isn't it?
Yes, I'm Jim Dunbar. I live at 3190 Majestic Circle in Crest Haven. I know some of you, some I don't. My daughter is Melissa Gates,
Oh, yeah.
and my son-in-law is the famous Jamie Gates.
I'm sorry.
Thank you. Carol and I have lived in Crest Haven now since its beginning about 25 years ago. We were the third home in, and it's been very quiet. We now have 160 homes out there approximately. And recently, a few years ago, new property owner purchased a lot with ACC approval to build the home for primary residence. And for reasons we hear, various reasons, she began to rent it. And it's right at Collins and Mill Pond, which is one of our more dangerous intersections. And it's right at that intersection. And this week, the folks that opened the new coffee shop had rented it, and she's limited to 4 cars, but there were 5 there, and one was half on the road, half off the road. I don't think we bothered Charles people with it, but a number of people commented that kind of scared them as they came around the corner. But in any event, the issues James has talked about, we've had underage drinking, and Christy Tapp, who most of you may know, picked up mail that as the underage drinkers scattered, they went down 3 different streets pulling mail out of the mailbox, and Christy was kind enough to pick it all up. We've had a firecracker go off at midnight from a group that was there for a funeral, and since it's a quiet neighborhood, we wondered who had shot who. The whole neighborhood was up, and we have had people down at the neighbor's pond, and we've also had cat calls to his teenage daughter down at the pond. And that's one of the issues we may have to address later, is we don't know the sexual orientation of the people that are there. We have good sex control laws in the city, but when you have visitors coming in from out of state, all kind of license plates, you don't know who might be there, and we have a lot of young children in the neighborhood too that ride bikes and that type of thing. So we're an advocate for this. We heard it had been done at other cities in Arkansas, and therefore we met with several people here and proposed it, said we'd support it. And then we've got 3 fingers pointing at ourselves. Crest Haven was started about 25 years ago. Covenants didn't dream of Airbnbs and that kind of thing. So we just surveyed the residents to see if there was their intent, if they would approve changing the covenants to ban short-term rentals. And we had 80% of the residents respond, which was surprisingly good. And 66% of them, 2/3 of them, support it. So we'll be working on changing our covenants to ban short-term rentals. We do not believe the current renter will stop, but at least we can slow it down from starting in other areas in the neighborhood. And with this, we'll also start to slow it down, make it a little more difficult to open one up as well. So we request your approval of this.
Thank you, Mr. Dunbar.
Thank you. I make a motion to waive the 3 readings.
I have a motion and a second to waive the 3 readings. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes 7-0.
Make a motion for the adoption of the ordinance, and I have it as, 02194.
Second.
Have a motion and a second to adopt this ordinance. Any further discussion? Mr. Garrett.
Ms. Mel,
Aye.
Ms. Isby,
Yes.
Mr. Jones,
Yes.
Mr. Grimes,
Aye.
Ms. Smith,
Yes.
Mr. Ledbetter,
Yes.
Mr. Hawkins.
Yes.
Passes 7-0. Thank you, Mr. Hawkins. Next, we have the Public Service Committee, and the first up is consideration to approve the disposal of assets for the physical plant. And we have Mr. Spencer Clausen, the guy who keeps Conway looking good up.
We try. So this is just a simple consideration of disposal of these assets. Physical plant has got any number of chainsaws, power tools, side-by-sides, lawnmowers, just things that are past their service life. And you should be proud to know that we've got all the goodie out of this equipment. This is money well spent, and these things are beyond any type of repair, and they just need to really be disposed of.
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to approve the disposal of this equipment of assets for the physical plant. Any further discussion? Mr. Garrett.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed.
Passes 7-0. Thank you, Spencer.
Thanks, Spencer.
Next, we have public safety, and we have an ordinance to appropriate. Well, let me think about it. We don't need to appropriate funds tonight, or do we, Mr. Winningham? Okay. I have an ordinance to appropriate funds for Station 3 rebuilding. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Based on the outcome of the committee meeting, I'd say your
Okay.
first reaction was probably correct. I don't think we need to appropriate funds just yet until we know exactly
Okay, that's kind of what I was
where we're
thinking.
gonna go.
So, Charles, would the correct thing be to table this tonight? Yeah. Council, y'all's approval, I'll make
So
I would
moved.
recommend.
Second.
Have a motion and a second that we table this appropriating funds for Station 3 until Chief Winter and Chief Ledbetter can come back with some numbers for the council. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Pass 7-0. Yes, sir, Mr. Jones.
Do you think we need to tell people what we're?
Pardon me?
Do you think we need to tell the listening audience what we're tabling?
Yeah, oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, good point,
Good
Mr. Jones.
point.
We're tabling, for those of you that were not here for the 5:30 meeting, the fire station located in Industrial Park. Fire station number 3 was built in 1977. It has some structural damage that was going to cost about $900,000 to repair, and then it was not guaranteed to be 100%. Or we can rebuild at $1.5 million. The council has chosen to go with the rebuild, and so Mr. Ledbetter, who is a retired assistant chief of the Conway Fire Department, current fire chief Mike Winter, are going to work on a couple of options and then bring those numbers back to the council. And then moving forward, we will rebuild that fire station. I appreciate the council taking quick action on this. There's some things we can do without. Fire station or police protection are two of those things that we cannot do without. So thank you, council. Thank you, Mr. Jones.
Well, will we have it on the agenda next?
We will. Well,
next
that'll be
meeting,
whatever Mr.
you
Ledbetter
think?
and Chief Winter come up with.
Yeah. The sooner to move on it, the better, I feel like, though.
Yeah, right now, they are able to operate in
Yeah.
it, so, but time is of the essence, I agree. Next up, we have an ordinance appropriating funds to replenish the overtime expense account for the Conway Fire Department. Chief Winter.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. We have depleted our overtime funds for this year. Numerous reasons, most of them related to and around COVID. Through all the COVID clinics that we have hosted, working with both Conway Regional and Baptist Hospital, working with the school districts related to COVID. That's the brunt of our overtime, and we're requesting $105,000 to get us through the remainder of the year.
Mayor, should we use some of the CARES Act money for this?
Well, the
Overtime?
CARES Act money we've already used tonight.
Okay.
We've spoken for it.
Well-
Mr. Winningham, I will defer to you. Is this something that rescue money can be used on?
Yes, sir, I believe it could. It would just need to be something we identify in part of our comprehensive plan for the rescue funds once we get to that point.
I mean, it sounds like a majority of it is COVID related.
Right, yeah,
so-
for sure. Yeah, one of the aspects of the rescue plan is responding to
Right.
the pandemic, which includes vaccine clinics and
Right.
and things of that nature.
Okay, thank you.
I got a,
And just as an update, we have received our first round of rescue funds.
that's what I was
Oh,
about to
great.
ask you.
Yeah, we've got the $6.1 million or so, and as soon as we get final guidance from the Treasury on
What you can spend.
what it can be used for, then we'll start the process of determining what that plan is.
Great.
Input in public meetings and so forth.
There's 2 rounds.
They gave us a total allocation, which was 12.1 or 2 million, 12.2, and they give you half now and half a year from now.
Miss Mel is going to Washington, D.C., and she is going to get to visit with Congressman Hill and Senator Bozeman and Senator Cotton, and hopefully she can come back and give us some idea on what their final recommendations are going to be. We hope for sure that they put stormwater in there.
So the rescue funds are intended to be spent forward, whereas the CARES Act was intended to reimburse cities for funds already expended. But they have said that you can go back to March of 2021. So if we did vaccine clinics after March and it required overtime, we should be able to allocate rescue funds towards that.
We've done several since.
Yeah. I make a motion to waive the 3 readings.
I have a motion and a second to waive the 3 readings. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes 7-0.
I make a motion for adoption and the emergency clause as well.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to adopt this ordinance with the emergency clause to appropriate funds to replenish the overtime expense account for the fire department. Any further discussion?
Just a question, this is saying the general fund balance, would that still be the same wording that we would need in appropriating those funds for them?
Yes, ma'am. What we can do now is appropriate general fund money, and then at the point in time when we get that rescue plan developed, we can just sort of
Move it
pay
over.
ourselves back.
Yeah, great.
Mr. Garrett?
The ordinance 02195, Mr. Hawkins?
Yes.
Mr. Grimes?
Aye.
Mr. Ledbetter?
Yes.
Miss Isby?
Yes.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Miss Smith?
Yes.
Miss Mel?
Aye.
And the emergency clause, Mr. Hawkins? Mr. Grimes?
Yes.
Mr. Ledbetter?
Yes.
Miss Isby?
Yes.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Miss Smith?
Yes.
And Miss Mel?
Aye.
Those pass 7-0. Thank you, Chief. Before we go any further, I need to apologize to Jonesboro Mayor Copenhaver. He and I had a wager. I took the University of Central Arkansas Bears. He, of course, took ASU. The loser had to wear the opposing team shirt to a council meeting. I was supposed to wear that shirt tonight, and we've already been in text contact with each other. He's wanting a picture of me wearing that, so I had to apologize. I said I left my house at 5:45 this morning, and I forgot it. So 2 weeks from now, I've got to honor my wager. So, Mayor, I apologize.
Why don't you just tell them they don't sell them in Conway? I'm just saying.
I'm sure he could get it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Sure, he got him one.
Next up is an ordinance appropriating funds to replenish the overtime and fuel budget. Let's take those separately. Let's start with your overtime budget, Chief, for the Conway Police Department.
So much like the fire department, we have replenished our overtime account this year. Of course, we knew at the beginning of the year with what was budgeted that we would be coming back at some point in time and asking for more money. I'm happy to say that we have extended it much further than I ever expected us to. But I do believe that it will take us approximately $100,000 in overtime to make it for the remainder of the year. And we're asking you guys to approve that tonight.
Make a motion that we waive the 3 readings.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to waive the 3 readings. All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Passes 7-0.
Can any of the monies be used for his overtime?
Yes, it's the same.
At all?
We're gonna do the same thing.
It has been an expensive year in the city with everything that's going on, and it doesn't look like it's gonna get any cheaper for a while,
Yeah,
so.
I guess that's a no.
Well, it's same answer.
Same,
You know,
same
if
thing
it's-
apply.
If you can get
If
it,
it's overtime related to responding to the pandemic, then we can
okay,
do that.
well, maybe it will be.
I bet it was.
Okay, we have a,
I make a motion for the adoption of the ordinance and the emergency clause.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to adopt this ordinance with the emergency clause.
Before
Yes,
we
sir,
do that,
Mr.
there's more in that ordinance than just that.
There's fuel as
Fuel.
well.
Yeah, I asked him to separate them out for the
we,
council.
we need to vote one time. He can talk about them
Okay,
individually.
you're correct, Mr. Thank you, Mr.
Okay.
Grimes.
Mr. Grimes.
In addition to that, at this time, we're also asking for $50,000 in overtime funds for Shop Secure. This is something that we do every year, but since we were coming before you all today, we wanted to go ahead and place that
That's a
instead
good
of
idea.
coming back in a month. So we were asking for $50,000 there, as well as $50,000 to replenish our fuel expense. Our fuel account was lowered this year. As you all know, the cost of fuel has gone up, so we're lacking for the rest of the year, and we believe, based on our projections, that $50,000 should cover us for the rest of the year.
All right, council, I think y'all are good on the first one on the overtime, and then as Mr. Grimes said, we've added the other two. Any further discussion or any thoughts on your part? Okay, Ms. Isby's made the motion, and we had it seconded that we would adopt this ordinance with the emergency clause. Any further discussion? Mr. Garrett.
This will be ordinance 02196. Mr. Ledbetter?
Yes.
Ms. Isby?
Yes.
Ms. Mel?
Aye.
Mr. Grimes?
Aye.
Mr. Hawkins?
Yes.
Ms. Smith?
Yes.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
And the emergency clause, Mr. Ledbetter?
Yes.
Ms. Isby?
Yes.
Ms. Mel?
Aye.
Mr. Grimes?
Aye.
Mr. Hawkins?
Yes.
Ms. Smith?
Yes.
And Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Those both passed 7-0. And council, I know that you'll notice that we've had several items tonight with the emergency clause. We don't normally do that, but these are funds that police and fire work out of pretty quickly. And as we've mentioned in the permitting department, we'll have somebody ready to go in the morning. So this is not something that we do frequently. So Chief Tapley, you're up next for asset forfeiture funds for the Conway Police Department.
Yes, sir. We're asking to utilize some funds from our asset forfeiture account for two different items. First, we're looking to refresh our firearms. We normally do that about every 5 years or so, and our last ones were purchased in 2016. We have the opportunity right now to trade in our current firearms. We are also able to trade in some additional seized firearms to purchase the new ones, and it would leave us with a balance of $18,173.90, which is very low for the number of firearms we would be receiving.
Yes.
Are these Glocks, Chief?
They are. Right now, we use a 40 caliber Glock. We will be going back to a 9mm for several different reasons, but we think that's a better move for us at this point.
Thank you.
I make a motion to waive 3 readings.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to waive the 3 readings. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes 7-0.
Make a motion for the adoption of the ordinance, and I have it as 02196.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to adopt this ordinance appropriating asset forfeiture funds for the Conway Police Department. Any further discussion?
I got a
Going back to 9mm,
Yes, sir.
and you said it's better for the department right now. Can you
Yes, sir.
translate that?
It's a lighter weapon. The ammunition is cheaper. It's easier to handle for smaller framed persons. Also, this particular firearm that we're going to will allow us, as we move forward, to add optics to the firearm, which will also increase our ability to place shots.
Mr. Jones, do you have questions?
And he just told me what I want to know. Ammo is a problem too with the 40s. It's
It is.
a lot more easy to get 9s than 40s.
Even with the purchase of the weapons now, it is very likely that we won't see the weapons and the ammunition for another year. That's why we're wanting to go ahead and get this done now, just because we know it will take us so long to get it.
Thank you, Chief. Mr. Garrett.
Ms. Smith?
Yes.
Ms. Mel?
Aye.
Ms. Isby?
Yes.
Mr. Hawkins?
Yes.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Mr. Ledbetter?
Yes.
Mr. Grimes?
Passes 7-0. Next up, we have an ordinance appropriating reimbursement funds from various entities for the police department. Chief.
So I may have missed something here, but the second part of that ordinance was also use of funds for a physical fitness regimen. Oh, yeah. Is it separate?
It is, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, it is.
No, it's on D6.
Yep.
The testing equipment?
D4. So I have one for the sole source, but the appropriating asset forfeitures on my copy anyway shows to be on the same
Yeah,
ordinance.
Okay,
on D4.
I got it. I see.
What is the physical?
Okay, you can proceed, Chief.
So, as you know, one of the things that we've concentrated on in law enforcement for a number of years now is mental and physical fitness. All of our new hires have to complete a physical fitness test. This year, for the first year, we have started having our officers also do that physical fitness test. We've been relying upon other places to allow us to use their facilities, and we would have to schedule around that. Also, the new test that we're looking at is job related. It institutes job related tasks, so it's something that they can be doing. It's not your normal push-ups, sit-ups, things of that nature. And so this is just a move for us to be healthier, more fit as a police department, to be self-reliant upon being able to give the test as we need and when we see fit. We've done a research on this, looked at different companies, different testing programs. We actually sent a group of our officers up to Springdale to go through this test. This is the same thing they use. It's very similar to what the state police uses to get their input. We didn't want to just make a decision without getting that back from them, and by all accounts, this is where everybody feels like we need to go right now. Do we need to do anything else as far as ordinance?
We don't, but I note that D6 is I believe is the same, covers the same subject matter as the second whereas,
Oh, okay.
or section 2
Yeah,
in
we buying
D4.
20 of these or just 10? This is duplicated. I mean, for 450, we're buying 10 for a test for 10 people in D4. Are we doing it again in D6 to get to 20?
No, sir. That's not our intent anyway. The 28,450 includes all of the equipment as well as the certification of 10 of our officers to conduct the test.
So D6 is not needed,
Okay.
in other words, okay.
Unless we gotta keep them, unless we need to keep them separate. So that's one of the good things about.
Sure. I don't have the ordinance in front of me, but based on the agenda, I think D6 is just to waive bidding. So we don't have to go through the bid process.
Okay.
To buy that equipment. And then D4 is to appropriate.
Okay, very
Sole
good.
source provider, yeah. So that is the good thing, to answer your question, that's one of the good things about this particular test. We have done some research. We can set it up out at our training center by moving things out of our bay. That they will design a course specific to our place out there. We've also talked about being able to use the show area out at the expo center that is covered in case we have inclement weather. So we'll be able to move it from place to place, and we won't be relying on someone else to tell us when we can do it.
What if you got somebody out there too old like me and can't finish it, what are you doing?
You mean like me too?
I'm sorry, finish.
Bless you.
Excuse me.
I'm just kidding, go ahead.
Okay.
We didn't want that.
All right.
We didn't want that.
Council, back to you.
So are we good?
According to Mr.
Okay.
Finkenbinder, we are.
Okay.
Well, let me just check and make sure where we are. Are we still on D4? Is the
Uh-huh.
council still considering D4? Okay.
We already voted on approving it
Right.
before we talked about the other. but-
So now I'm confused. So we're also talking about the physical abilities testing equipment, are we not?
it was in this
In
D,
D6, so it's-
D4, but D6 is sole source provider.
Okay,
So
So-
that's another ordinance. D4, yeah,
okay.
which we already voted for.
All right, so we've already voted for that. We've waived the 3 readings on D5?
Nope.
All right, so I guess that's where we need to be.
Yeah.
All right. Take a motion, council.
Make a motion to waive 3 readings.
Second. I have a motion and a second to waive the 3 readings. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes 7-0.
Wade needs it, well,
For the adoption of the ordinance.
second.
All right.
I have it as 97, I believe.
I think it's 98.
98.
I have a motion and a second to adopt this ordinance. Mr. Fingenbinder, explain so the public will know and I will know exactly what we're doing.
This is something
Okay,
else.
so if I'm following this correctly, this is ordinance 021-98, also listed on the agenda as item D5. And this is, I believe, a request by the Conway Police Department to replenish expenditure accounts that are listed
Yes.
after receiving reimbursement funds from various companies, Paymac and CLIA.
Correct.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Fingenbinder. All right. Any further discussion? Mr. Garrett?
Mr. Ledbetter?
Yes.
Mr. Grimes? Ms. Mel?
Aye.
Ms. Smith?
Yes.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Mr. Hawkins?
Yes.
Ms. Isby?
Yes.
Passes 7-0. All right, council, thank you. And finally, the last item, Chief, D6, ordinance to waive bids for the purchase of physical ability testing equipment for the police department.
Yes, this goes back to the physical fitness equipment we just talked about.
Right.
The industry that we looked at is called LEPAT. It has a patent on the equipment as well as the intellectual properties. Therefore, we're asking that we be able to waive bids.
I make a motion to waive the 3 readings.
I have a motion and a second to waive the 3 readings. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes 7-0.
Make a motion for the adoption of the ordinance, which is 021-90.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve this ordinance. Any further discussion? Mr. Garrett?
Mr. Grimes?
Aye.
Ms. Isby?
Yes.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Mr. Ledbetter?
Yes.
Ms. Mel?
Aye.
Ms. Smith?
Yes.
Mr. Hawkins?
Yes.
Passes 7-0. Thank you, Chief.
Thank you. Thanks, Chief.
Okay, that's all the new business. We have a couple of items on old business. One would be a resolution authorizing the mayor to enter an agreement to acquire property located at 1203 North Museum Road for the relocation of District Court. I do know that we've had a fire station come into place since then. So council, it'll be up to you to decide what you want to do with this, since we had, that has changed. We were going to use our CARES Act money for the courts building. We decided to use the CARES Act money for the fire station. So there is money in reserves, but you know, that would be up to y'all.
How much do we have in reserves?
I just pulled up the last financial statement. Do you have it handy? I mean, I've got it pulled up.
I just looked at our current balance and it's at about 9 million. And 1.7 of that is the remaining CARES Act, so once that's gone, it'll be about 7.3.
But we also have other things that we've committed. The hangar, which is almost $1 million. Is there anything else that was coming out of the fund balance like that?
That one, are you referring to the hangar loan?
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's, council really hasn't technically committed that yet, but we have
Yeah, but
discussed
we're
that the
gonna-
general
yeah.
fund
And
would cover that. That
And we
was
have another kind of
a little over
major
600,000.
purchase
Yeah.
potentially on here too. So, and Tyler, one more quick question. Just remind me, how much do you like to have in reserve for our operations? I know we've talked about it before.
The typical recommendation from federal government accounting boards is to have 3 to 6 months of expenditures saved up. So a month of expenditures, I think, would be about 2 to 3 million. So we would want to have
Yeah, about 3 million.
5 to 6 in reserves at a minimum.
Okay, so we're getting close to
Well, we
that
won't
with
have the
some of the
money.
things we've already, okay.
Yeah.
I just wanted to make sure before we started.
What are we gonna do about are we gonna talk about Axiom building?
Yeah, that's
That's
next.
next.
That's separate, yeah.
Center.
Yeah, that's next. That's what I was thinking. We have kind of some major things coming out of the fund balance for the general fund.
How we can,
Judge,
The Axiom building, though, I think the plan is the agreement would be, we'd purchase it if the bond issue passes, and
Right.
it would be purchased with bond.
Correct.
Money. It'd be
Right.
bond.
That's
Every
correct.
dedication of bond money, so that doesn't really affect the general
Okay,
fund for
that's-
that.
Yeah.
I mean, that's my understanding of how we're gonna fund that.
yeah,
yes, sir.
Because if the bond issue doesn't pass, then we don't buy that.
it's moot, yeah,
It's a moot
it's a
point.
moot point, yeah.
Judge Clausen's here. Judge, would you like to say anything?
I just want to encourage you to really to consider the resolution. I think Jamie was good enough to arrange a tour, and everybody had a chance to look at the facility. It will, I think, to provide court facilities for this community for years to come. It answers a lot of questions. It gets to the parking. It has its own parking lot. It's out of downtown, which has been an issue for a number of years. It is a facility that we can use and can expand as needed. So I would encourage you to pass this resolution, let the mayor see what he can do, work his magic, and see if he can make it.
It's a
Jamie's
magic
the magic girl. Thank you, Judge. Counsel, it's back to you. Any questions, thoughts?
How we're gonna pay for it? It's the magic question. I mean,
I'll have one more comment just related to Ms. Mel's question. So the general fund consideration for the Axiom building is that if we do purchase it, then we no longer have that lease revenue coming
yeah,
to the airport. So
And that's $100,000 a year.
$100,000 a year revenue that the airport loses that at this time we don't have any identified way to replace it. So it would probably be
So we know that would come into
it would be a
play,
general fund transfer to the airport to keep them
right?
going.
yeah.
Okay.
Judge, everybody I talked to that was able to go to the building had nothing but good things to say about
Oh,
it.
yeah.
But I'm a little leery right now about jumping out and buying that because of so many other things that we've got that are on our plate or we know that are coming on our plate right now.
Yeah, and I understand, I mean, that, I'm looking at it from the standpoint of the court and what we need over there and what we're going to need in years to come, and how long this will be available, I don't know.
Yeah.
It's been on the market for a while, but it may not be much longer, and I've been looking around, and I know other folks have, see if there's anything else in the community that could be in this price range and would fit our needs, and I'm just not aware of anything out there that would, short of buying property and starting over. So, but I understand, you know, I've been around government long enough to know, you know, money's always an issue. and-
Yeah, well, it's just the fire department thing came up on us that we did not anticipate.
Yeah.
Prior to touring the facility and all that. I mean, I think we all love the building and all, would work great. It's just figuring out money-wise.
The biggest thing for me would be getting traffic out of downtown in the parking, but, yep, Judge, we were gonna use the CARES Act money. I'm assuming the council was going to use CARES Act money for that, and, not 3 days after we all went out there, Mike Winter came back with his,
Revelation.
yes, from Craft and Tull,
Right.
so.
Can we, if we don't do this, can we still look later on for getting that from downtown? I think that's a concern with everybody moving it from downtown, because I hear a lot of people talking about that, but like you said, we do have something a little more urgent right now. But I don't think we need to just throw it away. Maybe we can put it on the back burner
To let it drop, yeah,
Yeah.
I don't think we should.
Yeah, I don't know if anything else gonna come up. I mean.
what I'm saying is, I don't know what the urgency is gonna be to buy that building out there either.
Yeah,
But I'm saying, hopefully, I don't think it says hopefully, it'll still be on the market, or we can find something else, who knows?
yeah.
But I know we do need a fire
I mean, it's a
station.
shame that all that came up, but.
And for the public, for the people who are listening, you know, they listed the appraised value at, what, 1.485? And then we were gonna put another million in to renovate
That
it?
was, that was the estimate.
The
yeah.
estimate, so,
It was a $2.5 million.
yeah, it's a $2.5 million.
I kind of think we can probably do it for less than that.
Yeah, but-
I
yeah.
understand, yeah, sure.
I mean, if we're gonna do it, we wanna do it right and make
Yeah,
sure
for
that,
Please, yeah.
that, you know, it's safe for the,
Who knows what, the
For
same
everybody.
thing about the fire station, building a new one might apply
might apply
to
for
just
the,
the court instead of renovating and buying and renovating, it might be more feasible to build a new. I mean, I'm just saying, because we finna be on the hook for the fire station for not much more to build one than it was to renovate. I don't know.
Okay, council, back to you. Judge, it looks like it's going to die from lack of a resolution.
It would seem so, yes. sir.
It's not personal. Fire stations and class and ISO ratings take precedent.
Well,
Life safety, so, and I know it's, I know everybody wants to move you out of town and give you more room too, and we hear that a
Don't
lot.
say we
but-
wanna move him out of town.
Well, want to move courts out of town. Sorry, Judge, that didn't come out. Forget that if I ever have to stand before you, would you please? But anyway, we will not forget. We will.
all right,
we
well,
will visit.
I will keep you in mind. I don't know, the fire station may not take as much as you think it's going to. and
that's
Things
possible.
may change and.
And that is possible.
Something else may come along that, I'd like to bring to your attention, and I'd like to leave that, option open.
Come on,
Sure.
come on.
For
sure. It's always.
But I do appreciate your attention and your your recognition of the fact of what we're dealing with and what we do need to address, and I appreciate your willingness to consider it.
For Thank you,
sure.
Judge.
Thank you.
Thank you. And our final item tonight is a resolution to authorize the mayor to enter into a real estate contract to acquire the property located at 450 Corporate Drive for the future community center and aquatic facility, pending the outcome of the bond issue election when we have that. Really, this is just letting them know that if the bond issue passes, that we would like to buy their facility, but that if the bond issue does not, then it goes away.
Have we, when will we decide on a date for
I'm sorry, Mr. Jones.
the election we were talking about? When we gonna decide?
The plan, Ms. Isby, is to bring it before this council, and we have to set a date. Is it 60 days or 90 days out? 60 days out. We were planning on bringing it to this council in October,
Yeah,
and hopefully to have it ready to go to the public in December.
December 14th, and that we discussed.
December 14th?
And they'll be, they've already had, how many have we had,
We've had-
open meetings?
We've had one, and then there is another. There are two meetings that are scheduled for this coming Thursday, which is the 16th. There'll be one at 5:30 and then another at 7. And that is for the public to come in and offer input, and we'll have the architects and everyone there at those meetings. So we are definitely encouraging people to attend those meetings.
And where will that meeting be?
They will be at the Expo Center.
I make a motion for adoption of the resolution.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to approve this resolution authorizing the mayor's office to enter into a real estate contract to acquire property located at 450 Corporate Drive pending the outcome of the bond election. Any further discussion? Mr. Garrett.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed.
Passes 7-0. Council, there is a Ward 2 and Ward 4.
yeah, thank you. There's a combined Ward 2, Ward 4 meeting on Monday, September 27th at 7 o'clock right here. Primarily, we want to show people some of the progress with the RAISE grant preparation and where the trail's gonna go. But this will also be a standard ward meeting where if people have questions or issues they'd like to bring to our attention, we'll be there to listen. And many of the department heads will be present too.
Chief Tapley, you and Mr. Winningham, Mr. Walden, we know we need you there for sure. And Finley, Vincent, Felicia, would you remind Finley? I can't see Finley. And anybody else that you guys, and Robbie, yes, Robbie, want you guys to be there for sure. All right, well, council, that's all we have for tonight. I'll take a motion to adjourn. I'm sorry. I'm sorry? Wes he's out of town. Yeah, he's in Dallas. Anyway, I'll take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
We are adjourned. Thank you.